I'm Kelly Jennings, CEO of PowerBand Solutions. PowerBand is a cloud-based provider of auction, inventory, and finance solutions that make buying, selling, and financing vehicles more efficient. PowerBand Solutions trades on the TSX Venture Exchange symbol PBX and on the OTCQB symbol PWWPF and on Frankfurt symbol 1ZV. For more information, please visit us at powerbandsolutions.com.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Stewart Muir, Executive Director of the Resource Works Society. Welcome back to the show, Stewart.
Thank you, Jim.
Stewart, BC says it's applied for intervener status to support the federal carbon tax in any court action. Is this something British Columbians want?
Well, I think there's probably in BC a little more awareness of what a carbon tax is all about because we've had one for 10 years. And a lot of people are, I think, okay with carbon tax. It's really just another of the many, many taxes that are on your liter of gas. People just pay it. It's on your natural gas at home. It also appears in industrial products and anything that uses fossil fuels. They found a way to, put a meter on it and gather revenue to do things like give credits to the film industry and pay for Medicare. So that's a reality of carbon tax in BC. I think in other parts of the country, it's not as well known. And there's also political leadership that is saying, hey, are we sure we want this carbon tax? Because what's it going to do for us? So there's, I think, going to be a looming political fight. And the federal Liberals have basically staked themselves to the idea that we need carbon pricing, not necessarily a carbon tax. There's other kinds like cap and trade at a national level in order to address climate change. And so for BC to go into the suit as an intervener, it's them saying to the federal Liberals, hey, we got your back in this. We think carbon taxes or the carbon tax in BC is important, and we're going to be raising it. They've committed to that, increasing the per ton cost. And so far, I think public opinion in BC is kind of okay with carbon taxes. I've done some work showing that it doesn't really make any difference at all when you look at how people drive in their cars. Like, no difference over 10 years that I can see. The amount of gasoline we use per capita is about the same. This year it's a little bit down from 10 years ago. Last year it was a little bit up from 10 years ago, but it's no big difference. So there are people who wonder if the idea of putting a tax on carbon is to reduce the amount of fuel used, why we haven't reduced the fuel used in BC. But setting that aside, I think BC's as a provincial government clearly showing where it's going to be in this fight ahead. And it is a fight because we got Ontario, potentially Alberta, if there's a change of government there. We have Saskatchewan, Manitoba, New Brunswick, and even Quebec is maybe in the balance as to which way the new government there goes. It was just elected recently. So a lot of people against it and, some people for it.
Now, of course, in BC, the Liberals were the ones who brought in the carbon tax, so there's little chance that they'll remove it, admitting that perhaps it wasn't the right move.
Yeah, well, the thing with carbon tax is that these lower levels, $20 or $30, $40 a ton, it doesn't really seem to make any big difference. And to change the very nature of the economy, the size of the carbon tax would have to be so large that a lot of people are naturally concerned that if we do this to our economy, but it doesn't happen next door, but say, if we have a $1,500 a ton or a $300 a ton carbon tax, 10 times what we have now, would that do anything more than just simply cause our industries to go to the USA or other places? That's really the concern, carbon leakage. And, I think common sense is a really good guide to understanding the situation, because you have so many economists out there who've played with their models and they'll tell you, no, it's all fine. Nothing bad can happen if we put these taxes on our economy. Well, it doesn't really stand up to common sense when you assert that by placing the massive price on a necessary element of the economy, having fuel, because we do need fuels to get around, to transport goods to market and people to where they need to go to do business and earn their living and so forth. I mean, you're putting a high price on things, especially if there's no alternative. And right now the alternatives are often more dreamed of than actually in existence in reality. So you've got this disconnect. You know, how do we get to this low carbon future that everyone agrees is what's needed, but actually getting there in a way where we have an economy left by the time we get there.
We'll have more with Stewart Muir right after this.
Avon Resources Limited is a gold exploration company with significant projects in British Columbia, Saskatchewan, and the Yukon. Trading on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ABN, and the pink symbol ABN-AF. Surrounded by world-class gold deposits and mines, Avon's 23,000 hectares Forest Kerr Gold Project is located in the heart of the Golden Triangle in northwestern BC. For more information, visit us at avonresources.com.
Grand Portage Resources recently completed the 2018 drill program on its 100% controlled Herbert Gold Discovery property located in the prolific Juneau Belt in southeast Alaska. Drill results are expected through late 2018. Past drill results included numerous multi-ounce gold assays on multiple veins. Grand Portage trading symbols are GPG on the TSX Venture, GPTRF on the OTC QB, and GPB on Frankfurt. For more information, please visit our website, grandportage.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Stewart Muir. Stewart, GM plans to close its Oshawa plant and perhaps 4 other facilities in Ontario, throwing perhaps 10,000 people out of work. What's the position of the Resource Works Society on this massive layoff and closure of plants?
Well, I think for anyone looking at it, it's a terrible day for the workers, families who are directly employed in Oshawa and also indirectly, because the thing about the automotive industry is it relies on this vast chain of goods and services that move around the economy. You know, you need to get engines built and moved around, all the parts and da-da-da. It's huge. And, you know, they make cars in Oshawa that go to the Middle East, they go to South America. It's a big developer of export revenue because of that. Not only, you know, building cars that Canadians can drive. So it's such an important part of the economy. It's maybe, in terms of GDP, it's 0.1 or 0.2% of the economy. So just Oshawa, right? And that would compare to, say, you took the whole aquaculture sector in Canada, which is about 0.2% of GDP. It's about the same size. Just that one mega plant, the Autoplex they call it in Oshawa. That's how big it is. And the consequences are going to be felt everywhere. You know, as Westerners, I don't think we should see it as an us versus them thing, but there are some things that you have to look at from a Western perspective with a critical eye, because I think from an Eastern or Central Canadian perspective, there's kind of two economies. There's the part of the economy that matters, which is what's around Toronto and Montreal, and then there's all the other stuff, which is what happens in the West, the oil and gas sector, mining, forestry, the kind of stuff that pays the bills for Canada, but the latte sippers south of Eglinton and Toronto don't really care about. They'd rather we didn't have. They just like to get the money from it. They don't like to have the sort of challenges of innovation, environmental stewardship. They'd rather not talk about that. That's my experience in Toronto anyways. But nevertheless, we are one country. We have to work together. I think the important thing to remember here is that automotive sector is the second most important part of the economy in exports. The number one most important part of the economy in exports is crude oil. It's what pays the rent for us as a country. Right now, unfortunately, there's a lot of people, especially down east, who don't want to take the time to understand how important oil and gas is, and also how innovative and responsible it is in terms of developing the impact on the landscape, also impact on climate. You know, if we're going to get around in airplanes, if people are going off today to Cabo San Lucas for a little break, you're using fossil fuels to get there. And you're doing the same thing if you're going shopping in Metro Vancouver, you're using fossil fuels to do that. You're buying products that are made with fossil fuels. The reality is we have these things in our lives, and we have an imperative to get better at them. So the number one most important export in Canada is crude oil. It is not only the biggest, it's bigger than cars, but it also creates the greatest trade surplus. Now, you think about things like iPhones and orange juice. There's two things. Those are examples I choose carefully because we don't make iPhones in Canada. We don't make orange juice in Canada. If we could, we would. Sure. But we don't. We have to buy them somewhere else. And the way we do that is we have to have trade surpluses. We have to have extra money so we can engage in trade. And automobiles actually give us a negative trade surplus. They give us a trade deficit because we have to import all kinds of parts to build cars with from other countries. So as much as we appreciate the jobs, it actually does very little for our trade surplus or trade balance. And crude oil does that. So every single Canadian benefits when they open the fridge and get the orange juice out, when they reach into their pocket and grab their Samsung or iPhone, smartphone, from having the trade service. That's what crude oil does. And I know there's some people say, oh, we got to get off those fossil fuels. Well, the whole world is based in our modern era on fossil fuels. We're all based on that 200,000 calories of energy equivalent that each one of us has to consume. Not directly, but through all the things we do in one day, that's how much each of us consume. You and I, Jim, everyone listening to this, it's a massive amount of energy, and it's only been possible because we have developed a relationship with fossil fuels. And there's good and bad in that. So I think the big challenge as a country, if we want to continue to be able to put orange juice in the fridge and put iPhones in our hands, we have to have things that generate a trade surplus. And oil and gas, LNG is another one, forestry, mining, they do that too. And there's very few other things that generate trade surpluses the way that those things do. And you know, I would like to go out to Oshawa and let people know that, because I think if they're looking for their jobs, hopefully if we have a government in Ottawa that supports oil and gas in Alberta and BC and Manitoba and Saskatchewan and the North and Newfoundland, then we can have a successful country. You know, if we're run by ideologues in Ottawa who think that you just have solar panels instead, which doesn't work in Canada, then we are headed for not having orange juice in our fridges or iPhones in our hands.
We'll have more with Stewart Muir right after this.
Hi, I'm Douglas Mason, President and CEO of Magnum Gold Corp, MGI and the TSX Venture Exchange. A 2015 drill program on the LH property intersected several high-grade gold intersections, including 11 meters of 20.66 grams per ton gold. Additional drill targets on the LH property have been identified by a 2018 drone airborne magnetic survey to further evaluate a pyrrhotite-enriched gold-bearing system. Please visit our website at magnumgoldcorp.com.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Stewart Muir. Stewart, do you feel that there's a big future in British Columbia and the rest of Canada for liquefied natural gas, LNG?
Well, you know, I think the advent of the LNG Canada project, which is the big one up in Kitimat, that's a $40 billion project. I'm sure everyone's been hearing about that. That's huge. It's going to take years to build. It'll be a lot of activity rippling through. And I think, you know, most of us recognize the need for it, but you think about what it could do for us in climate terms. Right now, we're struggling to reduce our climate emissions. It's very difficult, especially because people are driving bigger cars all the time. They're living more energy-intense lifestyles. You know, people go off to their foreign holiday in a plane and don't think about it these days. When I was growing up, people planned and thought about any long-distance air trip. Maybe they would plan for months or years before they did that. It's not like that nowadays. We live in this incredibly energy-intense civilization. How do we manage the climate emissions from that? And LNG Canada, one project alone, can reduce in China all of the emissions that BC produces. It's a beautiful formula for being able to transition to the lower carbon future in a way that is manageable so we have an intact economy. And I think when you look at what's happening, going to happen in 2019, we see the news out of South Korea. They're going to order a fleet of LNG ships, 140 new ships on order. And the whole thing here is to help Asian countries in particular, but also Europe, escape energy poverty and get cleaner air, because that's what LNG does when you use it to replace coal. And also when you use it for other things like backing up renewable energy. You know, people in a country want to have wind. They know the wind's not going to blow all the time, so they get natural gas or LNG to back that up. So, LNG is being talked about now by the natural gas LNG community worldwide, the people I follow, as the breakthrough year. This is where we're going to see a lot of stuff happening in the States. We're going to see more happening in Canada. You know, they're coming in from Poland to set up shop in Calgary so they can understand how they can get some Canadian natural gas to Northern Europe, because they have issues up there too. So that's why I'm seeing 2019 as this breakout year, Jim.
Well, with 140 extra LNG ships, are there enough LNG ships to actually move around this stuff if BC really starts cranking out liquefied natural gas?
Well, I think the runway time you need to get these things built is such that you've got to be planning years ahead, so these things can get into the shipyards and be built. I think potentially it will be a struggle to keep ahead of this, but it does seem as if the right people are watching it. There's a company based in Vancouver called TK Shipping that's been here for many years, fairly low profile locally, but they're a mega company worldwide in LNG carriers. They've been adding to their fleet. They have a remarkable number. It's, I think, in the hundreds of ships. So, the fleet is out there. It's quite new, so that's good because you've got the latest technology to make sure that efficient and safe transport of the commodity takes place. But the demand for LNG is very high, so it's a good question.
One of the most popular features you have on your website or Twitter feed is a map that shows you where all the world oil tankers or other kind of ships are. How popular is that?
Well, about a year ago, I started using an app called Marine Traffic. You can have it on the iPhone version or the Samsung. It's out there. You can have it on your desktop. There's a free version anyone can use. I recommend it if you're interested in where ships go, what kind of ships are out there, how many are there. You can see them in real time because they have these things they're called AIS devices on board ships, and they send out a signal of where a ship is at any time, and it's pretty cool. But I've been using it to show one thing, which is oil tankers, because there's all this controversy over whether there should be more or not more tankers that carry oil from Metro Vancouver, from Vancouver Harbor out to sea and then to the markets where this is being sought after, because we have this big problem in Canada. We're losing probably $60 to $80 million a day because we're failing to get the true market value of oil from Alberta. And what the pipeline will do to the coast is let us capture that so we can have more iPhones, orange juice, schools, hospitals, roads, bounties, and fighter jets, things like that. That's all. So you look at the current traffic in tankers worldwide. It's mind blowing. If you use marine traffic to isolate those, as I've done in the tanker maps, and if you go to my Twitter feed, it's SJ Muir, M-U-I-R, SJMUIR. You see pinned to the top of my Twitter the 25 top tanker map tweets of the last year. We strung them together into one little story, so you can open the thread and you can see the ones that got the most comments, the most action. And you know what I found is that number one thing people are interested in when you start talking about it is just the weird fact that right now we have oil tankers that come into our neighboring American ports in the Salish Sea in Puget Sound every day. Like, there's so many of them going to the refinery complex down there. And you never hear Greenpeace raising a stink about it. But you're looking at one tanker a day from Vancouver, and all of a sudden it's this sort of, catastrophic thing. Well, it's really the same kind of oil in there, which I also demonstrate in this Twitter feed. You know, people talk about Alaskan oil, they talk about bitumen, and it's really so close to being the same thing that an ordinary person would not be able to tell. It would come down to a chemical analysis to be able to tell one from the other. And actually, the one from Canada is easier to clean up. It's now been proven by federal scientists if you have a spill, which of course no one wants and it shouldn't be expected because it's a 1 in 2,000 year possibility. And you go through the tweets, you know, the second one, most popular, I had a map showing the exact position of every oil tanker in the world at one moment. And you look at that map, it's like, holy cow, how could there be so many oil tankers? Like, if what Greenpeace says is true, that these things spill all the time, but there's thousands out there and they're not spilling. I never hear about them spilling. I mean, maybe occasionally there's some accident in China or somewhere. Well,
Stewart Muir, since,
jive.
I was going to say, since governments around the world after Exxon Valdez and Alaska mandated that all tankers in coastal areas, and that's all of them because they have to land somewhere, have to have double hulls. None of those double-hulled tankers have had a major accident. None.
Well, that's right. I mean, you look at the curve from when that accident happened, it's actually remarkably like the decline in accidents in civil aviation. Do you remember, like, guys as old as we are, remember a day when, a week wouldn't pass when there wasn't some horrible accident, a plane crashing on a runway or into a mountain or colliding in air. Remember those days? And, you know, that is not how it is today. But there's far more planes, far more flights, and the safety is there. That's exactly what's happened in shipping safety as well. In particular, oil tankers, because of the double hulls, but also they have so many layers of safety and procedures and professional training that, you know, it's gone to such a low risk rate where, you know, they still obviously need to study the risks, but we know so well what the problem areas are, and we manage so well as we do in passenger aviation that these are, for all intents and purposes, nowadays just everyday activities, and you no longer think about safety stepping onto a plane because you know it's so safe. Just as when you see a ship in the harbor, you don't think, oh, there's a problem. It's only when you see maybe some deliberate campaign that is trying to frighten you for some political reason start to, you know, plant those fears. But in reality, the record speaks for itself of safety.
Stewart, I wonder, like, one ship extra a day around the waters around Vancouver, is that going to wipe out the orcas? One extra ship?
Well, these ships move slow. You know, one thing I did, again, using the marine traffic app, you could do this. You have to go to the desktop version. It's a little more involved. You can compare these ships. You know, a BC ferry crossing the Strait of Georgia over to Sawasan, say, that's moving at a shade under 20 knots. That's really fast.
They're clipping along, yeah.
You know, 15 knots is fast in the sailboat. Now, a tanker moves at about 14, like 12, 13, 14 knots through these inner waters.
Or slower if they're requested to by law. Or slower if they're requested
as slow as
to.
They are, yes. And they also have, at different points, 1, 2, 3 tugboats that are tethered to them that ensure there's an additional layer of safety. And you might ask, well, it's a big ship, so does it create more acoustic noise? Well, a huge factor in shipping noise is propellers. And there's so much science, technology nowadays put into the metallurgy of propellers and also the physics and shape of how the water is moved around when you have these massive pieces of metal churning up the water. And so through that, it is possible to make significant gains. Also, there's a program that's been, to some extent, I think, voluntary by the ports and the shipping people to have a voluntary slowdown of all shipping through the critical habitat of the southern resident killer whales down around that part of the Salish Sea. So there's a lot that humans can do to lessen the effect of navigation. And, you know, you also have to consider that whales do have a knack for swimming, and they are pretty good at getting out of the way of things. And you don't see accidents with killer whales. It's a very rare thing. There are accidents with other kinds of whales that I've heard of, but I've never heard of a killer whale strike involving a tanker.
They're pretty nimble.
Yeah, they do. They do move fast. They're quick.
Stuart,
ask a seal.
Stuart, thank you so much for chatting with us.
My pleasure.
My guest has been Stewart Muir, Executive Director of the Resource Works Society. His Twitter handle, @SJMuir. His website, resourceworks.com. You're listening to HowStreet.com radio. Find us on Twitter @HowStreet. Our very popular YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. Questions for the show or our guests like Stewart can be sent to info@HowStreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard. Thanks for listening.
Comments made on HowStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.